Hey everybody, Dennis Hendrickson here. I know it's been a long time since I posted anything, and there's a reason for that. I've been extremely busy doing a lot of other things, and it's time consuming and difficult to do online instruction, and also it's also hard to do Federer videos, which is really what my channel is kind of based on, because Roger Federer hasn't been playing. And he hasn't announced retirement, so I don't know really what's going on. I did quite a few Djokovic videos too, and that's kind of what I want to discuss today, among other things. So there are a lot of people out there that are good tennis instructors. There's a lot more people with who've been on the tour and things like that that are doing tennis stuff, which is great. So I think it's becoming a bit more oversaturated. So really what I wanted to talk about today was more from a political perspective and everything that's going on in the world, especially with what's happening with the Australian Open this year and Novak Djokovic. 2021 was a nightmare of a year. Endless lockdowns, tyranny, oppression from governments. And, now it's come to tennis. Tennis is now feeling the, I guess for the lack of a better word, the oppressiveness of government on these lockdowns and what's happening with mandates and, whatever it is you want to call it. And I got into an argument with a friend this morning while we were playing tennis, and didn't end well, where, literally said to me, if the mainstream media didn't say it, it's not true. In other words, if there's anything outside the mainstream media, whether it be the United States or anywhere else, then it's not true. And that really opened my eyes to something where, I've always felt strongly about certain things, but then when I hear somebody that I know so well say that to me, it bothered me a lot. And then when I see what's happening to Novak Djokovic, now meanwhile, I'm not giving him a pass, but I do believe that there's something not right happening here that I wanted to talk about. And so I'll get into it. But Novak Djokovic, which I didn't think was going to happen. I honestly didn't think he was going to go to Australia. I thought he was just going to say, look, I'm not vaccinated. You're not allowed into the country, blah, blah, blah. I'm just not going to go. But he decided to go anyway. And apparently he had gotten an okay from the Australian Tennis Authority. But then when he got to Australia and landed there, he was detained. His parents said that he was arrested. And he was put into a detention center, which, according to Djokovic, was, pretty bad. And so what happened, I guess, he had been given a medical exemption to play, and a lot of people in Australia were not happy about it because of all the lockdowns they've endured. And so the Australian government said, well, you can't play. Now, this all goes back to his exemption coming from a prior infection. So in other words, he was able to get the exemption because of a prior infection in December of 2021. I do remember him having an infection in 2020, which caused an uproar. He had this tournament. There were a bunch of people in the tournament. He had to apologize, all these different things because of that infection that he had. And so if he had an infection in December of last year, that means he was infected twice. I have not heard of anyone that I know of or famous on the news, anything. I haven't heard anyone who's had two infections. Not one person. He'd be the first one that I'm aware of that would have that. So I sort of like scratch my head a little bit, like okay, I guess he got tested. He didn't know about it. Then he was seen with photos. So I'll go into the article. This is a BBC article. He had been granted a medical exemption to play, and infuriated Australians who have been living under some of the world's strictest COVID rules. And again, in my opinion, tyranny and oppression. And his lawyer submitted documents arguing that he fulfilled the criteria for a vaccine exemption because of a recent COVID infection confirmed by a PCR test on December 16th. Now, if my friend tells me, well, that could be faked, whatever, relying on his visa application. Well, if that's true, I hope he gets punished for it. But I certainly wouldn't believe that he would fake this or lie on the application. But if he did, he should be punished for it. There have been no prior announcement of Djokovic's COVID infection. Photos since emerged of the player apparently attending events in the Serbian capital Belgrade, maskless, at around the same time he tested positive. However, it was unclear that he knew he had COVID when the photos were taken, so there's some discrepancy there. The Australian government insisted that a recent COVID infection only offers an exemption for residents. And the government lawyer said the tennis star had been given no assurance that a medical exemption would be accepted. Okay. Well, wouldn't you, as an Australian government, if you're so concerned about what's going on and what's happening with the biggest tournament of your country, wouldn't you have your shit together and maybe get with the tournament officials and say, these are what the rules are going to be, let everybody know ahead of time? But it looks to me like the government didn't have their shit together. So the Djokovic team will effectively tell the court that the decision to revoke the visa was affected by a variety of jurisdictional errors, but that the government will firmly reject any attempt to have its processes ruled invalid. Djokovic's lawyer said that he was kept at the immigration control point at Melbourne Airport for about 8 hours after he arrived, and he had little communication with them during that period, which the Australian government says was in no way unfair to the tennis star. I mean, they're used to treating their people like dirt. On Sunday, a court order by Judge Anthony Kelly stated they requested to delay the hearing. Now, the government wanted to delay the hearing until Wednesday. I don't know why that would be. I would think that you would want to get that taken care of as quickly as possible. But the judge refused. And that trial is going on right now. In fact, I have a friend, his wife is actually a lawyer. She was able to get into it somehow and is actually listening to it as we speak. If I hear anything, I will let you know. But I'm sure it's going to go on for a while before I'm finished with this. Last week, Tennis Australia said it would need to know whether Djokovic was participating in the Australian Open so he could schedule his games in the competition. While he waits a final decision, Djokovic's lawyers have asked him to be moved from the immigration detention hotel, which he had described as deplorable conditions, and others have described as not very good conditions, which should be also looked into, I think, by other governments for maybe some issues there. So he would like to be moved somewhere else, but apparently they're not doing that. And again, I don't know why he even went to this tournament. I really don't. I would have stayed home and said, look, what you guys are doing is horrible, and I'm just not going to participate. But I also understand at the same time, he's defending his championship. He's won it, 7, 9, I don't know how many times. And he's also trying to break through 20 Grand Slam mark. But I'm sure he's probably thinking that he should have not have done that. Could have done something
The documents
else.
presented by Novak Djokovic's legal team to the court attempt to answer the question at the heart of this controversy. Why was he granted a vaccine exemption? Well, now we know that Djokovic tested positive for COVID-19 on December the 16th, and that a recent infection is a valid reason for an exemption. This is according to Australia's technical advisory on immunization. These are the rules that Tennis Australia and the state government here in Victoria say they have followed. This exemption was granted by 2 independent medical panels, but the picture changed when he arrived. The border officials have said that he did not provide appropriate evidence and that a prior infection is in fact not a valid reason. So a contradiction in rules here, a contradiction in information. And this is essentially what the judge has to look at and examine. What rules apply? Is it state government rules or federal government rules? And why are they different? The other thing, of course, that the documents point out is that the exemption was revoked, they say, after a public outcry. This is the initial anger that Scott Morrison's government had to face when Novak Djokovic announced on social media that he was coming to Australia, coming to defend his title, and that he had been given an exemption from the vaccine. Many people have said that he'd been given special treatment, that it was one set of rules for the rich and famous and another for everybody else. And the government was then at pains to say that this was not the case, that rules are the rules. But in doing so, the federal government has actually added to the chaos, added to the uncertainty. What's also emerging is this monumental breakdown in communication between the organizers, the state government, and the federal government, that now a decision has to be made by a judge. And until that happens, the world number one is here in that immigration detention hotel, waiting for that decision. It's unclear whether he's going to be moved somewhere else. He's asked to be moved to a place with a tennis facility. We don't know if this is going to happen, or he's going to remain here until a judge decides on Monday whether he can stay and defend his title, or he has to be deported. Whatever happens, this is a hugely embarrassing situation for Australia a few days before one of the biggest sporting events in the country.
I think Australia should be embarrassed about a lot of things, not just this. But this just goes to show you what's happening there and how you don't have these things figured out before, again, the biggest tennis tournament, one of the biggest tennis tournaments in the world, and the biggest tennis tournament that Australia has. And so, yeah, it's embarrassing, but I think it goes way beyond that. It goes way beyond how they've treated their people with these lockdowns, excessive lockdowns. I'm going to go in more of that in this channel. I know some of you are probably going to, say I'd unsubscribe, whatever. That's fine. But you can't deny the fact that the things that are going on right now across the globe are terrible. And, people have the right to decide what they're going to do, and to be treated as second-class citizens and be treated terribly because they've chosen not to do this procedure, I just don't agree with. And, I did a poll on this channel related to whether or not someone should be forced, like Djokovic or Tsitsipas should be forced to have a vaccine before going to a tournament in the Australian Open. And more people said, no, you shouldn't be forced. But there were people that said yes. I'm not surprised at that. But again, this is kind of comes down to what my friend told me this morning, that if I'm not watching state-run, government-controlled, corporate-controlled media, then everything else is fake. And that opened my eyes this morning even more than before, that there's some real terrible stuff happening all over the place. And when I see, looking outside, your typical legacy corporate run media. And I'm seeing all of these protests that are going on in Austria, Germany, France, Australia, name the country, Netherlands. And that stuff's not being showed on our media, but I know it's going on. And I'd like a lot of you to comment, because I know a lot of people from different countries that watch this. I want to know what's going on in your country. Are you even able to play tennis? Are you able to even walk out the door without being beaten by police? Are you able to go to work? Are you able to do certain things? Or are you locked down? And are there protests going on? I would like to know about it. And I know that there are, but you don't see it on mainstream media. So I'd love to hear the comments on it. But I hope you all stick around with the channel. I'll be talking about this. I'll continue to be talking about tennis. And, you know, the unfortunate thing, too, is Federer's disappeared. Not literally, but he's fallen off the radar. And, it makes me wonder what's going on. Is he retired but not officially saying so? Is he, avoiding all of this because he knows, what the vaccine, I don't know what his vaccine status is. It's just the whole world is in turmoil. And I want to talk more about it. And tennis to me is just not, with things that are going on right now with this Australian Open, it just goes to show you that there are way more important things right now than any soccer match, football game, tennis, cricket, baseball, basketball, any of this stuff. Way more important. So I appreciate you watching. I'll be posting more frequently with this stuff, and I want to hear what everybody else has to say. And we'll talk to you next time.